Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So continuing the series of videos on the Kubernetes, in the previous video, we have discussed that how to create a kind cluster, that is a Kubernetes in Docker, a local cluster where you need not to create any specific kind of cloud resources. So we have created a kind cluster in the previous video and we have deployed a sample pod, that is an Nginx pod. So in the today's video, we are going to take that thing forward and we are going to talk about a concept called services. So let's start the video, guys. So guys, have you ever deployed a pod and wondered how do actually I access it from outside the cluster? So in this section, we will learn how to expose your Kubernetes pod using services and one of the most important concept that is in Kubernetes. So we will cover what a service is, what is the difference between different types of service, that is to say cluster IP, NodePort and load balancer, and how to expose your Nginx pod running in the client cluster. So a pod in Kubernetes has a dynamic IP address. That means if a pod restarts or scales, its IP can change. So it makes it unreliable for other components to connect. So a service solves this problem by providing a stable virtual IP that stays the same even if the pods change. So you can think of a service as a network endpoint that connects to one or more pods using labels and selectors. So these labels and selectors we will talk in details when we are going to write the manifest file of our service. So let us talk about the services. Before writing a manifest of a service, we will talk about the type of services. So the number one service, what type of a service, what we are going to discuss is a cluster IP. So basically, cluster IP is a default type, so which is accessible only inside the cluster. For example, when your backend API needs to talk your database. So basically, so within the cluster, if your services want to communicate with each other, they will be using cluster IP. So the second one is NodePort, which a NodePort is a type of service which opens a static port on each node and allows external access using the port. For example, perfect for local client clusters or on-prem setups. So for example, so if you want to test your deployment and if you want to test it from outside the cluster, so for within the cluster you can use cluster IP. So if you want to access your service from outside the clusters, basically it will give a static port on each node. So let's say you are hosting your deployment on one kind of an EC2 instance. So basically it will open a port on your EC2 instance. So the IP of your EC2 instance with the port number, what node port will be giving, for example, 30,000 something, that port will be your node port service. So basically by that you can access your deployment at the back end. So the third one is load balancer. Basically, the load balancer will be creating an external load balancer using cloud providers like AWS or Azure. So not these things are not available by default in a kind since it's a local cluster. So guys, as you can see, I am in my terminal here. So in the previous video, continuing to the previous video only, so we have deployed a test pod. Basically, we have used Nginx there as a test pod. So as you can see, it's running. So let me get the command kget pod. So as you can see, it's running from 3 minutes. So it's fine. So in the previous video, we have deployed it. So let me describe it. So this is the command to describe your pod, kubectl describe pod and the name of the pod. Here the name of the pod is test pod. So basically I am going to describe this pod. Basically I am going to extract the details of this pod. So as you can see, there is the full details of this pod, name of the pod, so on which node it is created, start, and the labels as we have mentioned. This is a very important thing. So the container ID, image, in the events you can see that started the container test pod. So this is the command to check the details of your pod. So let me check the YAML. So as you can see, we are using Nginx as an image, latest image. So this is the pod which we have created in the previous video itself. So if you have not watched that video, please go and watch that video, guys. So let me create a file for the service here. So I will give the name as test-svc to maintain the same naming convention. So let me start with the API version. So as we have talked the camel casing, so the second word of the name will be in the upper letter. So API version will be V1 for the service. Kind will be giving it as a service. So basically this is an object. So metadata, as we have talked in the previous video also, the data of your deployment. So the name of your service deployment, basically it will be Nginx. I will not give Nginx. Let me give test only. Test service. So basically, this is the name of this service. So this is with respect to metadata. So the metadata is finished. So basically, metadata is a key, and the value is again key value pair. That's why we have intended. So I will start with the spec. So what are all the spec of the service? So selector is basically it is going to select the pods based on the labels what and all we are going to the pods. So here we have given app Nginx. So basically it will go and fetch all the pods whose label is app is equal to Nginx and take them under the service. Basically static endpoint will be given to all the pods. So the ports, basically on which port and what port of the service should be open and what port, I will explain you. Wait, so before that let me give the in the port section protocol. So basically we will be giving protocol as TCP. So we are having TCP protocol, UDP protocol. So TCP, for this port section we will be giving the protocol as TCP. So basically we are defining the ports of our service. Let's say if your if your application is running on port 8080 and to be uh, we want the service to be something else. Let's say if your application is running on 8080, but I want that to be exposed on the port, let's say 80. So here we can define those things. So basically your backend, service will be running on 8080, but the endpoint what we are going, that is to say static endpoint for our service, it will be exposed on port 80, let's say. So like that we are going to decide those things. So basically protocol I will be giving TCP here. So after that, as we have talked about the thing, the port, what we are going to give is 80. This is the service port which will be exposed as an endpoint. So next I will be giving as target port. So target port is basically the port of your application or let's say deployment which it is running. So here we are having same things. So it is also running on 80. So if it is 8080, let's say you have to give 8080 there. So type of the IP, as we have mentioned, all the services type we will be giving cluster IP as of now as a service. So this will be used for the internal communication between the pods, let's say within the cluster. So let me apply kubectl apply -f test svc.yml. So as you can see, the service has been created by the name test svc. So give me give k get svc. As you can see, it is running as test svc, which is having an IP address cluster IP, and it is exposed on port 80 as a TCP protocol. So guys, as we can see, we are having an endpoint, basically a static endpoint. So even at the backend, if the pods are deleted or recreated, if the dynamic IP changes also, that doesn't matter here. So basically, we have given the labels. So by the end, the service will be having a static endpoint. So whenever the pods get deleted or recreated, it will automatically fetch those pods based on the labels, sorry, what we have given, and it will be giving at every point of time a static IP, basically which will not change. So basically this is an idea of our cluster IP. This is for internal communication, as you can say. So in the next video we will talk about the NodePort, and we will try to expose these services outside the cluster. So thank you guys. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching the video. So there will be more in the upcoming videos. Keep watching my channel and keep supporting me. So thank you guys.